A woman will almost never walk up to you and directly say, "I'm attracted to you, I want you to make a move." That is usually not how attraction works. Instead, she often communicates through small, almost invisible signals that most people overlook. She may touch something. She may make a subtle movement. And if you don't understand what that gesture means, you might completely miss the opportunity that was right in front of you. The surprising truth is that the biggest conversations between two people often happen without any words at all. Research into nonverbal communication has shown that a huge portion of emotional expression happens through body language, facial expressions, and unconscious movements. That means the most important message she may be sending you is not coming from her voice. It is coming from the way she moves, the things she touches, and how comfortable she becomes around you. And this is where many men struggle. They are listening carefully to every word she says, but they are ignoring the silent language happening right in front of them. They miss the signals because nobody ever taught them how to recognize them. Let me explain this from a woman's perspective. Women are not nearly as impossible to understand as many men believe. The reality is that people reveal a lot through their behavior. The way someone moves, the way they adjust themselves, the objects they touch, and the way they react around a person can reveal emotions they may not even consciously notice themselves. The problem is not that women are hiding some impossible secret code. The problem is that most people were never taught how to read these small signs, and today, we are going to change that. What I'm going to share with you is not just random dating advice or recycled information you have heard hundreds of times. These are observations based on human behavior, communication research, and real patterns seen in attraction and social interaction. I spent time studying body language research, behavioral psychology, and the everyday experiences that many women have but rarely explain openly. Before we get into the first sign, there is something important you need to understand. The final sign we will discuss is the one that surprises most men because it does not look like flirting at first. In fact, many men misunderstand it completely and assume the woman is losing interest. But the reality is very different. So stay until the end, because understanding that final signal could completely change the way you interpret your conversations with women. Now, let's begin with the first thing a woman often touches when she feels attraction: her hair. I know what you might be thinking. That's obvious. Everyone knows that. But here is the part most people don't understand. There is a major difference between a woman casually fixing her hair because it is uncomfortable and a woman repeatedly touching her hair because she is aware of someone she feels drawn toward. A simple adjustment once or twice may mean nothing. It could just be normal grooming. But when she keeps touching it during the conversation, when she twists it around her fingers, moves it from one side to another, or repeatedly plays with it while maintaining engagement with you, that behavior becomes much more meaningful. Researchers who study human courtship behavior have found that repeated hair touching can appear as an unconscious response during moments of attraction or nervous excitement. It is not always something a person decides to do. Sometimes the body reacts before the mind even catches up. When someone feels emotionally stimulated, the nervous system can create extra energy. The hands often need somewhere to release that energy, and hair becomes one of the easiest places for that movement to appear. So how do you tell the difference? If she touches her hair once and forgets about it, don't overthink it. But if she repeatedly runs her fingers through it, plays with it, moves it away from her face, or positions it in a way that draws attention, that can be a sign that she is becoming more aware of you. And this leads us to another subtle signal that many people miss: the neck. When a woman gently touches her neck or brushes her fingers along her collarbone while talking with you, there can be a deeper meaning behind that movement. The neck is one of the more vulnerable areas of the human body. From a psychological perspective, showing vulnerability or drawing attention to this area can be connected with comfort, openness, and trust. When someone feels safe around another person, their body often becomes more relaxed and expressive. A woman may not be thinking, "I'm going to touch my neck to send a signal." That is usually not how it works. It is often automatic. The body communicates emotions before the person even realizes what they are doing. From my own experience, Many women do not even notice these small gestures until after the conversation is over. They are not sitting there planning every movement. Their reactions simply happen naturally. That is why body language can sometimes reveal more than words. A person can say they are relaxed, but their body might show nervous excitement. A person can say they are just being friendly, but their actions might suggest deeper interest. And when you learn how to notice these small differences, you begin to understand interactions in a completely different way. Another subtle signal that many men completely overlook involves the lips. This is one of those small behaviors that can be easy to dismiss, but in the right context, it can reveal a lot about a person's attention and emotional state. When a woman lightly touches her lips, presses them together, gently bites her lower lip, or applies lip balm while maintaining eye contact, it may not always be a random habit. Sometimes, it can be a way of unconsciously drawing attention to one of the most expressive features of the face. The important thing here is context. A single movement does not automatically mean attraction. People touch their faces for many reasons. But when you combine that gesture with other signs, such as strong eye contact, smiling, staying engaged in the conversation, and creating opportunities to continue interacting, the meaning can become much clearer. Human beings are naturally drawn to faces. The eyes, the smile, and the lips all play a major role in communication. We use these features to express emotions, confidence, interest, and connection. That is why many people instinctively become more aware of these areas when they are around someone they find interesting. A woman may not consciously think, "I want him to notice my lips." Instead, the movement may happen because she is feeling more aware of herself in that moment. And that brings us to a sign that often separates simple friendliness from genuine interest. It involves something that happens almost automatically: playing with jewelry. When a woman starts touching her necklace, spinning her ring, adjusting her bracelet, or lightly playing with an earring while talking to you, it can be a sign that her nervous system is reacting to the interaction. Psychologists often describe this type of behavior as a self-soothing action. When people feel excitement, nervousness, anticipation, or emotional pressure, the body sometimes looks for a physical way to release that energy. The hands become the outlet. Some people tap their fingers. Some people move their hair. Some people play with objects nearby. And in certain situations, jewelry becomes the thing that receives that extra attention. This does not mean every time a woman touches a necklace she is interested. The surrounding situation matters. But if she is already engaged with you, keeping eye contact, smiling, asking questions, and then repeatedly touching her jewelry, that combination can suggest that she is feeling something emotionally. There is also another interesting layer to this. Sometimes the object she chooses to touch is located near an area she is subconsciously aware of. For example, if she keeps adjusting a necklace around her collarbone, it may simply be a nervous habit. But it can also be a way her body expresses confidence, awareness, and attraction. Now we move from indirect signals to something much clearer: physical contact. If a woman reaches out and touches your arm, your shoulder, or your hand during a conversation, that is a much stronger indicator, because she is crossing a social boundary. Most people do not casually touch everyone they meet. Touch creates a sense of connection. It changes the emotional atmosphere between two people. Studies on social interaction have shown that even brief physical contact can influence how people perceive warmth, trust, and closeness. A small touch can communicate something words do not. It can say, "I feel comfortable with you." It can say, "I want to create a stronger connection." And it can also be a way of seeing how you respond. This is where many men make mistakes. A woman gives a small sign, and the man completely freezes. He does nothing. He acts like nothing happened. From a woman's perspective, that can feel confusing. Imagine reaching out and making an effort to create a moment of connection, and the other person gives absolutely no reaction, no smile, no acknowledgement, no change in energy. It feels like you tried to start a conversation without words, but the other person never answered. The better response is not to become overly aggressive or assume too much. It is simply to recognize the moment. Smile. Stay relaxed. Maintain confidence. If the situation feels right, mirror the same level of comfort. The goal is not to force anything. The goal is to show that you noticed. Because attraction is often built through small moments of mutual understanding. Now, here is another signal that happens in everyday situations, and most men never even realize they are seeing it. Watch what she does with objects. Imagine you are sitting across from a woman at a cafe, a restaurant, or somewhere relaxed. Pay attention to how she interacts with her drink. If she slowly traces the edge of the glass, runs her finger around the cup, or repeatedly plays with the object while looking at you, that behavior can sometimes reveal emotional engagement. Objects can become a place where nervous energy goes. Instead of directly expressing every feeling, people often redirect that energy into small movements. It is similar to how someone might play with a pen during an important conversation or tap their foot when they are excited. The object becomes a physical outlet for the emotions happening inside. And when you combine this with eye contact, a relaxed smile, and genuine interest in the conversation, the meaning becomes stronger. The mistake many people make is focusing on one single sign. But human behavior is not a checklist. Real communication comes from patterns. One gesture alone may mean nothing. Several gestures happening together can tell a completely different story. Now let's move to another behavior that is easy to dismiss, but can reveal a great deal when it appears at the right moment. Watch what happens when a woman begins adjusting her clothing while she is around you. She might smooth the front of her shirt, straighten her jacket, tug lightly at a sleeve, adjust the neckline, or gently fix the way her outfit sits. On the surface, these seem like completely ordinary actions. After all, everyone adjusts their clothing from time to time, but timing changes everything. Human beings naturally want to present the best version of themselves when they are around someone who matters to them. This behavior is seen across many species and has long been recognized by researchers who study courtship and social interaction. Before making an impression, animals often groom themselves. People do something remarkably similar. We straighten our appearance, check our posture, fix our hair, and become more aware of how we look. It isn't necessarily about vanity. More often, it is about wanting to make a positive impression. The important detail is when it happens. If she was already fixing her clothes before she even noticed you, there is probably nothing to read into. That is simply normal self-care. But if you notice that these adjustments begin after she sees you, or while the two of you are engaged in conversation, it may suggest that she has become more conscious of your attention. Think about it for a moment. People rarely worry about how they appear in front of someone whose opinion means very little to them. But when someone becomes important, even if only for a few minutes, we naturally become more aware of ourselves. We want to look our best. We want to leave a good impression. That small shift in behavior is often completely unconscious. This is why context is always more important than any single movement. No one gesture proves attraction. But when clothing adjustments happen alongside warm eye contact, genuine smiles, open body language, and repeated engagement, they become another piece of a much larger picture. Now we arrive at the signal I mentioned earlier, the one that surprises most men because they often interpret it in exactly the wrong way. Imagine you're having a conversation with a woman. She's sitting across from you. As you speak, she gently rests her chin on her hand. Maybe she lightly supports her cheek with her fingers while keeping her eyes on you. Many men immediately assume the conversation is boring her. They think she's tired, distracted, or simply waiting for the interaction to end. In many situations, that assumption couldn't be further from the truth. Psychologists who have studied nonverbal flirting have observed that facial self-touching is one of the most common behaviors displayed during moments of genuine interest. When a woman gently frames her face with her hand while listening carefully, she is often directing attention toward her facial expressions without even realizing it. This behavior creates a softer appearance. It naturally highlights her eyes, her smile, and the emotions on her face. More importantly, it usually happens when she feels comfortable. People tend to protect themselves when they feel uncertain. They become tense, their movements become smaller, But when they begin feeling emotionally safe around someone, their body language often becomes softer, slower, and far more expressive. That is exactly why this signal is so often misunderstood. Instead of recognizing comfort and emotional engagement, many men assume boredom simply because her head is resting on her hand. But ask yourself something. Is she maintaining eye contact? Is she smiling while you're talking? Is she asking thoughtful questions? Is she paying close attention to what you're saying? If the answer is yes, then resting her chin on her hand is probably not a sign of disinterest at all. It may actually suggest that she is fully engaged in the conversation and enjoying the moment. From my own perspective, I can tell you that many women don't consciously decide to pose this way. It simply happens when they're relaxed with someone they enjoy talking to. Their body settles into a comfortable position, and their attention remains completely focused on the person in front of them. That combination is what matters. Never isolate one gesture from the rest of the interaction. Body language works like a puzzle. Each individual piece may not tell you very much, but when enough pieces come together, the full picture becomes surprisingly clear. And that brings us to one of the biggest lessons in understanding attraction. Words are important, but they are only one part of communication. Long before someone tells you how they feel, their body has often been revealing those emotions in subtle ways. The hands, the posture, the facial expressions, the direction of the feet, the amount of eye contact, and even the way someone responds to your presence can all provide valuable clues. That doesn't mean you should jump to conclusions or assume every friendly gesture is romantic. It simply means learning to pay closer attention, because attraction is rarely announced with a speech. More often, it quietly appears through dozens of small behaviors that seem ordinary on their own, but become meaningful when they happen together. The people who understand this are not reading minds. They are simply observing what has been there all along, someone says, while completely ignoring what their body is communicating. In reality, words can be carefully chosen, but body language is often spontaneous. It reflects emotions before the mind has time to filter them. That is why learning to observe natural behavior can completely change the way you understand social interactions. Think back to every signal we've discussed so far: hair playing, neck touching, lip gestures, jewelry fidgeting, gentle physical contact, playing with a glass, adjusting clothing, resting the chin on the hand. None of these actions, by themselves, automatically prove attraction, but when several of them appear together, especially during a positive conversation, they begin forming a consistent pattern that is much harder to ignore. This is exactly how behavioral psychologists approach body language. They do not judge people based on one isolated movement. Instead, they look for clusters of behaviors that all point in the same direction. Imagine a woman maintaining steady eye contact with you. She smiles naturally whenever you speak. She repeatedly plays with her hair, lightly touches her necklace, occasionally brushes your arm during the conversation, and seems fully engaged every time you share a story. Individually, each action might have an innocent explanation. Together, however, they create a picture of someone who is emotionally invested in the interaction. That is why context always matters more than any single gesture. Many men become confused because they either ignore every signal completely or overanalyze one tiny movement. Both approaches lead to mistakes. The goal is balance. Observe the overall pattern instead of searching for one magical sign that answers every question. There is another important point that deserves attention. Confidence is not about assuming every woman is interested in you. True confidence comes from being observant, respectful, and emotionally intelligent. It means recognizing potential interest without forcing your own interpretation onto the situation. If the signals continue consistently, respond naturally. If they don't, simply enjoy the conversation without creating unnecessary expectations. That approach not only shows maturity, but it also makes interactions far more comfortable for both people. One thing many women appreciate is when a man notices subtle communication without becoming overly aggressive or making the situation awkward. There is a significant difference between recognizing attraction and acting entitled to it. A woman may give small signs because she feels comfortable. She may be inviting deeper conversation. She may simply be seeing whether the connection feels mutual. How you respond to those moments often determines where the interaction goes next. Suppose she lightly touches your arm while laughing at something you said. Instead of freezing or pretending nothing happened, simply smile, maintain eye contact, and continue the conversation naturally. There is no need for exaggerated reactions. Sometimes the most attractive response is simply being present. Comfort creates comfort. When one person feels relaxed, the other usually does as well. That is why emotional connection often grows through small, effortless moments rather than dramatic gestures. As a woman, I can tell you that many of these behaviors happen without conscious planning. We are not sitting there mentally checking off a list of flirting techniques. Most of the time, our body reacts before we even recognize what we are feeling. Later, after the conversation is over, we may suddenly realize, I kept touching my hair, or I smiled far more than usual, or why did I keep adjusting my necklace? Looking back, those little moments suddenly make sense. That is what makes body language so fascinating. It often reveals emotions that words never express. This is also why paying attention can save you from missing genuine opportunities. How many conversations have ended simply because both people were waiting for the other person to make the next move? She was giving subtle signals. He was waiting for obvious confirmation. Neither recognized what was happening, and the moment quietly disappeared. Attraction is rarely loud. More often, it whispers. It appears in a smile that lasts a little longer. It appears in comfortable silence. It appears in repeated eye contact. It appears in unconscious touches that happen before either person fully understands why. Learning to recognize these moments doesn't mean becoming an expert in manipulation. It means becoming a better observer of human behavior. It allows you to communicate with greater empathy and awareness. Because the strongest connections are usually built by people who notice the little things others overlook. And once you begin recognizing these patterns, you'll probably look back on past conversations and realize that many signals you once ignored suddenly make perfect sense. Now, after understanding all of these behaviors, there is one final message I want you to take away. None of the signals we've discussed today are about mind reading. They are not secret tricks, and they are certainly not guarantees that someone wants a relationship with you. Human behavior is much more complex than that. These gestures are simply pieces of communication. They are small windows into how someone may be feeling in a particular moment. The mistake many people make is believing that attraction is always expressed through words. In reality, emotions often appear long before they are ever spoken out loud. The body reacts naturally, the hands move without conscious thought, the eyes stay focused a little longer. A smile appears more often than usual, personal space becomes smaller, conversations last longer than they need to. These are the quiet moments where genuine connection begins. That is why I encourage you to become a better observer rather than someone who jumps to conclusions. Notice the patterns, pay attention to consistency, respect boundaries, and remember that healthy attraction is always mutual. If someone seems comfortable, engaged, and repeatedly shows positive body language, respond with the same level of warmth and respect. If the signals are not there, don't force them. Confidence is not about convincing someone to like you. Confidence is about recognizing reality and responding to it with maturity. The next time you're having a conversation with a woman, don't focus only on the words she is saying. Notice how relaxed she becomes around you. Observe whether she naturally maintains eye contact, gently touches her hair, lightly brushes her neck, plays with her necklace, smiles without forcing it, or finds small reasons to make physical contact. Watch whether she adjusts her appearance after noticing you, or rests her chin comfortably in her hand while listening with genuine interest. None of these actions should be viewed in isolation, but when several of them appear together, they can reveal far more than most people realize. One of the greatest advantages you can develop in social situations is awareness, not manipulation, not pretending to be someone you're not. simply learning to understand the silent language that every human being speaks. When you do that, conversations become more natural. You stop guessing. You stop overthinking every word. Instead, you begin responding to the overall emotional rhythm of the interaction. That creates confidence that feels authentic rather than rehearsed. As a woman, I can honestly tell you that many of these behaviors happen completely unconsciously. We don't usually sit down and plan how we'll touch our hair, adjust a necklace, or smile at someone we find attractive. Our bodies often express what we're feeling before our minds fully process those emotions. That's why these subtle cues can be so powerful. They're often more honest than carefully chosen words. So the next time you notice several of these signals appearing together, don't panic, don't freeze, and don't ignore them. Stay calm. Continue the conversation. Match her energy respectfully. Show genuine interest. Sometimes the only thing standing between two people who like each other is the courage to recognize what is already happening. And remember, attraction doesn't begin with grand speeches or dramatic movie moments. More often, it begins with quiet gestures, meaningful eye contact, comfortable silence, and small touches that say everything words never could. Now that you understand how women often communicate attraction through body language and touch, there's another question you should be asking yourself. What happens next? Recognizing interest is only the first step. Knowing how to respond with confidence, respect, and emotional intelligence is what truly makes the difference. That's exactly what we'll explore in the next video. We'll discuss the subtle behaviors, confident actions, and communication habits that women genuinely appreciate but rarely explain openly. These aren't manipulative techniques or pickup tricks. They're simple behaviors that help create trust, attraction, and authentic connection. If today's video changed the way you see body language, then you won't want to miss that conversation. Until then, pay closer attention, stay respectful, and remember that sometimes the strongest messages are the ones that are never spoken. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our future discussions on psychology, relationships, and human behavior. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.